Hello my dear students, welcome to today's video. So we came to know that Morgans had their first child after 20 years of their marriage, but the child was lifeless. So let's see what did the doctor do. As he gazed at the still form of a shiver of horror passed over Andrew. When Dr. Andrews saw the still body of the child, there was a shiver of horror inside her. He got very much scared. After all that he had promised, Mr. Morgan said, I hope that you'll be doing good for us in the beginning. His face, heated with his own exertions, chilled suddenly. He hesitated, stuck between his desire to attempt to resuscitate the child and his obligation towards the mother, who was herself in a desperate state. So now he was torn between two states, whether to save the child or the mother. The dilemma was so urgent, he didn't solve it consciously. He had to take the quick decision. Blindly, instinctively, naturally, he gave the child to the nurse and turned his attention to Suzanne Morgan, who now lay collapsed, fainted, almost pulseless, and not yet out of the ether upon her side. Okay, she was there, not yet out of the anesthesia, she was there on her side. His haste, his hurry was desperate, a frantic race against her epic strength, a mad race. He was so quick because he wanted to make everything okay, because her strength, Mrs. Morgan's strength, was ebbing, reducing. It took him only an instant to smash a glass ampule and inject the medicine. Then he flung down the hypodermic syringe and worked unsparingly without wasting any time to restore the flaccid woman, the weak woman. After a few minutes of feverish effort, fruitful effort, her heart strengthened. He saw that he might safely leave her. He swung around, twisted round in his shirt sleeves, his hair sticking to his damp brow. His eyebrow was damp, wet because of the sweat coming around. Where's the child? The midwife made a frightened gesture. She had placed it beneath the bed. Thinking that the child was dead, she just kept it like a waste thing. In a flash, quickly, Andrew knelt down, sat on the knees, fishing amongst the sodden newspapers, wet newspapers below the bed. He pulled out the child. A boy, perfectly formed. The child was a boy whose body parts were perfectly formed. The limp, lifeless, warm body was white and soft as tallow. What is tallow? The hard fat of animals melted and used to make soap, candles, etc. So it was like that. The cord, hastily slashed, lay like a broken stem. The cord, okay, you all know that, which connects the mother and the baby. It was hastily slashed, cut, and it was like a broken stem now. The skin was of a lovely texture, smooth and tender, soft. The head lolled, hung on the thick neck. The limbs seemed boneless. The body parts, especially hand and feet, seemed to be boneless. Still kneeling, Andrew stared at the child with a haggard, surprised, frown, facial expression. The whiteness meant only one thing: asphyxia, pallida. And his mind, what is pallida? See, suffocation or unconscious condition caused by lack of oxygen and excess of carbon dioxide in the blood, accompanied by paleness of the skin, weak pulse, and loss of reflexes. So there may be lack of oxygen for the baby. That was the reason. This was his condition. And his mind, unnaturally tense, raced back to a case he once had seen in the Samaritan, to the treatment that had been used. Instantly he was on his feet. So when he was gazing at the child, he remembered the similar case he had seen. So he came to his feet. Get me hot water and cold water, he threw out to the nurse. Threw out means he quickly gave orders to the nurse. And basins, two large vessels. Quick, quick. But doctor, she faltered, her eyes on the pale body of the child. She hesitated because she was sure that the child was dead and nothing can be done with it. But the doctor shouted, quick. Snatching a blanket, he laid the child upon it and began the special method of respiration. The basins arrived, the ewer and the big iron kettle. Ewer is a kind of vessel to store water. in a big iron kettle. Frantically, he splashed cold water into one basin, into the other, he mixed water as hot as his hand could bear, tolerate. Then, like some crazy juggler, he hurried the child between the two. Now plunging it, jumping it into the icy, now into the steaming bath. So the doctor was doing this. Okay, for one moment he jumped the baby into the cold water and then into the hot water. He was doing this. 15 minutes passed. Sweat was now running into Andrew's eyes, blinding him. One of his sleeves hung down, dripping, because he was doing with water. His breath came pantingly, but no breath came from the lax, lifeless body of the child. A desperate sense of defeat pressed on him. He thought that he was defeated. A raging hopelessness. He felt the midwife watching him in stark, sheer, sharp consternation. Consternation again, confusion. While there, pressed back against the wall where she had all the time remained, her hand pressed to her throat, uttering no sound, her eyes burning upon him, was the old woman. But in one corner, the old woman was standing. That old woman was Mrs. Morgan's mother, who was standing there all the time, her hand pressed to her throat, and she was praying. He remembered her longing for a grandchild. Dr. Andrew remembered how much this lady was concerned for her grandchild, as great as had been her daughter's longing for this child. As her daughter means Mrs. Morgan longed for, desired for this child, similarly, this grandmother also desired for the grandson or grandchild. All dashed away now, stopped, finished, futile, wasteless, beyond remedy, beyond treatment. The floor was now a draggled mess. Stumbling over a sopping towel, Andrew almost dropped the child, which was now wet and slippery in his hands because of so much water on his body. The child was like slippery, moreover, the skin was very soft, like a strange white fish. For mercy's sake, doctor, whimpered the midwife. It's stillborn. The nurse shouted and interfered and said, Doctor, for God's sake, the child is dead. Stop making efforts. But Andrew did not heed her, did not pay any attention to her. Beaten, despairing, having labored in vain for half an hour, he still persisted, believed in one last effort. Rubbing the child with a rough towel, crushing, pressing, and releasing the little chest with both his hands, trying to get breath into that limp body, into that lifeless body. So now he was making that effort, pressing and releasing the chest of the little boy with both his hands. And then, as by a miracle, the pygmy, like a small pig baby's very small chest, which his hands enclosed, gave a short, convulsive, continuous heave, another and another. So they were heaves like heartbeats. Andrew turned giddy. Giddy means overexcited. The sense of life springing, coming beneath his fingers. After all, that unavailing, unstopped striving, hard working was so exquisite. Exquisite means which cannot be compared, uncomparable. It almost made him faint. He was so happy. He redoubled his efforts feverishly. The child was gasping now, breathing now, deeper and deeper. A bubble of mucus came from one tiny nostril, a joyful, iridescent, means of very good smell, bubble. The limbs were no longer boneless now. The head no longer lay back spinelessly because there was now life in the body. The blanched, colorless skin was slowly turning pink. Then, exquisitely came the child's cry. And then, the most beautiful thing, that was the child's cry. Dear Father in heaven, the nurse sobbed hysterically, madly. She sobbed, she started crying. It's come alive. It has come to life. Andrew handed her the child. He felt weak and dazed. About him, the room lay in a shuddering litter like dustbin. Blankets, towels, basins, soiled instruments, the hypodermic syringe impaled by its point in the linoleum, the ewer knocked down, the kettle on its side in a puddle of water. Everything was just messy. Upon the huddled bed, the mother still dreamed her way quietly through the anesthetic. The mother was still under that anesthesia, so she didn't know that she had given the birth to a lifeless baby, and how, with the doctor's efforts, she now was a mother of a boy who was perfectly fine. The old woman still stood against the wall, but her hands were together, joined. Her lips moved without sound. She was praying. Mechanically, like a machine, Andrew wrung out, fold his sleeves, unfolded his sleeves, pulled on his jacket. "I'll fetch my bag later, nurse," and said, "I'll come and take my bag later, nurse." He went downstairs through the kitchen into the scullery. Scullery is a separate area for washing utensils. His lips were dry. At the scullery, he took a long drink of water. He reached for his hat and coat. Outside, he found Joe standing on the pavement with a tense, expectant face. Neither Mrs. Morgan nor Mr. Morgan know anything. Mr. Morgan outside the house is just praying for everything to be fine, and Mrs. Morgan is in that anesthesia effect. So nobody knows this. That is the reason Joe Morgan is still having an expectant face. He didn't know what happened inside. "All right, Joe," he said thickly. "Both all right." But Dr. Andrew just said this thickly, briefly. "All right, Joe, everything is all right. Both are all right." It was quite light now, nearly 5 o'clock. A few miners were already in the street. As I told you, it is a mining town. The first of the night shift moving out. As Andrew walked with them, spent and slow. He was spent, means tired. His footfalls echoing with the other and under the morning sky. He kept thinking blindly, oblivious, ignorant to all other work he had done in Blenley. Whatever cases he had handled in the Blenley, he's just ignorant to that, and just thinking about this case. He said, "I have done something, oh God, I have done something real at last. This is the real work of a doctor, to save lives." And he had done something real at last. So this was the detailed text. In the next video, we'll be discussing about the question and answers. Have a good day.